December 22, 1944, at 06:00 in the morning, near the frozen forests south of Bastogne, Belgium. Snow falls in thick, silent sheets, muffling the sound of engines and boots. The temperature is well below freezing, and visibility is limited to a few hundred meters. On narrow, icy roads, the German High Command has committed a desperate measure, a concentration of approximately 72 Tiger heavy tanks, drawn from elite heavy panzer battalions, ordered to block the advance of General George S. Patton's Third Army as it races north to break the encirclement of Bastogne. These are not ordinary machines. Each Tiger weighs more than 50 tons, armored in thick steel, armed with an 88mm gun capable of destroying Allied tanks at extreme range. German planners believe mass and intimidation can still change the course of the battle. The order is clear: stop Patton at all costs. Inside the Tigers, the air is damp and metallic. Engines struggle in the cold, oil thick like syrup. Crews have not slept properly for days. Many are veterans of the Eastern Front, men who have survived years of mechanized slaughter. Yet even they sense something is different now. Fuel is scarce, ammunition is rationed, radio communication is unreliable, air superiority no longer belongs to Germany. At the same hour, Patton's forward elements are already moving. Columns of American Sherman tanks, half-tracks, and infantry units push through the snow with relentless urgency. Orders flow fast and sharp. Bastogne must be reached. Every minute matters. Patton has redirected an entire army in winter conditions once considered impossible. The soldiers know they are racing not just against the enemy, but against time and exhaustion. The first contact comes just after sunrise. A German Tiger platoon moves into a defensive line along a wooded ridge overlooking a frozen road junction. The ground is uneven, covered with snow that conceals mud and shell craters. When the first American reconnaissance vehicles appear, the Tigers open fire. The thunder of the 88mm guns shatters the morning silence. A Sherman erupts in flame, its turret blown apart. The shock is immediate and brutal. American crews scatter, calling in artillery support. Within minutes, shells begin to fall around the German positions. Explosions throw snow, dirt, and shattered branches into the air. The Tigers hold, firing methodically, but each shot reveals their position. German commanders urge their men forward, attempting to press the advantage before American numbers overwhelm them. By mid-morning, the battlefield has expanded. More Tigers arrive, pushing through narrow forest paths, their tracks grinding against ice and rock. Several tanks break down before reaching the front. Engines fail. Transmissions seize. Recovery vehicles are unavailable. Broken Tigers are abandoned, their crews setting demolition charges or fleeing on foot through the trees. Patton's response is swift and calculated. Infantry units equipped with bazookas move along the flanks, using hedgerows and forest cover. Tank destroyers are positioned to exploit range and mobility. Artillery batteries fire continuous barrages, forcing the Tigers to maneuver under constant pressure. The German formation begins to lose cohesion. Fear spreads inside the steel hulls. Crews hear the screech of incoming shells, feel the concussions slam against armor. Visibility through periscopes is poor. Smoke and snow obscure friend and foe alike. Orders arrive late or not at all. Some Tigers advance too far and become isolated. Others hesitate, waiting for support that never comes. By early afternoon, American fighter bombers appear as clouds briefly part. The sound of aircraft engines sends a wave of panic through German ranks. Rockets and bombs strike roads and forest clearings. A direct hit flips a Tiger onto its side, armor torn open. Another burns fiercely, black smoke rising against the white landscape. The counterattack is failing. Of the 72 Tigers committed to stop Patton's advance, many are already destroyed, immobilized, or abandoned. Crews retreat in small groups, exhausted, frostbitten, and hunted. American forces continue to press forward, absorbing losses but maintaining momentum. As darkness approaches, fewer than 10 Tigers remain operational in the sector. The rest are scattered wrecks across fields and forests, silent monuments to a plan built on desperation rather than reality. Patton's road north remains open, and Bastogne draws closer with every passing hour. The battle, however, is far from over. Night will bring new orders, new movement, and decisions that will determine who survives the next day in the frozen heart of the Ardennes. December 22, 1944. At 1940, the same sector south of Bastogne, Belgium. Darkness settles quickly, swallowing the forest and the wreckage left behind. Fires from destroyed tanks cast an unsteady orange glow through the trees, reflecting off the snow and twisted steel. The temperature continues to drop, and wounded men on both sides struggle to survive the night. The remnants of the German heavy tank force attempt to regroup. Fewer than 10 operational Tiger tanks remain, scattered across several kilometers, low on fuel and ammunition. Radio traffic is chaotic. Some units report enemy breakthroughs that no longer exist. Others receive contradictory orders: hold position, fall back, counterattack. Command structure is collapsing under pressure. Inside one of the remaining Tigers, the crew listens in silence as the engine idles. Every sound outside feels amplified, branches snapping under boots, the distant clatter of tracked vehicles, the dull thump of artillery echoing through the hills. These men understand that the Tiger, once feared as unstoppable, is now a burden. Its weight limits mobility, its fuel consumption is crippling, and without air cover, it has become a target. At 2015, American artillery intensifies. The barrage is deliberate, walking forward meter by meter. High explosive shells detonate among the trees, ripping apart defensive positions and collapsing shallow foxholes dug by German infantry supporting the tanks. Snow melts instantly under the heat of explosions, turning the ground into black, steaming mud that refreezes moments later. Patton's forces are executing a coordinated night push. Infantry advances behind artillery curtains, guided by flares and pre-arranged timing. Tank destroyer units move cautiously along secondary roads, avoiding direct confrontations where Tigers might still dominate. Instead, the Americans exploit speed, communication, and numerical superiority. At 21 hours, a Tiger attempts to relocate under cover of darkness. Its engine roars too loudly in the cold air. Within minutes, American forward observers detect the movement. Coordinates are transmitted. Artillery lands with brutal precision. The tank is struck repeatedly, not penetrated at first, but shaken violently. The crew bails out after a shell collapses the driver's hatch. Moments later, a direct hit ignites the interior. Another Tiger is lost without ever firing a shot. Elsewhere, German infantry begins to withdraw independently. Many no longer believe the tanks can protect them. Exhaustion and frostbite take their toll. Weapons jam from ice. Boots fill with freezing water. Officers attempt to restore order, but authority means little against the instinct to survive. By midnight, the German defensive line has fractured completely. The surviving Tigers are ordered to pull back to avoid total annihilation. This retreat is not organized. It is a desperate escape. Narrow roads clog with wrecks and abandoned vehicles. Fuel trucks never arrive. Crews siphon fuel from destroyed machines, working in darkness with numb fingers, knowing American patrols are closing in. At 01:30 on December 23rd, American units reach key road junctions once intended as German blocking points. These positions are now empty or littered with destroyed armor. Patton's timetable, considered impossible only days earlier, remains intact. His advance continues relentlessly toward Bastogne. Inside Bastogne, surrounded American forces still hold out, unaware of the full scale of destruction unfolding outside. What they do know is that the pressure from German armor is easing. Attacks become less coordinated. Fire slackens. Something is changing. Just before dawn, a final German attempt is made to use the remaining Tigers as a rearguard. They position themselves hull down near a ridgeline, hoping to delay the Americans long enough for infantry remnants to escape. When the first light breaks through the clouds, American aircraft return. Rockets strike with devastating effect. One Tiger is hit in the rear, where armor is thinnest. The explosion kills the entire crew instantly. By 06:30, resistance collapses. Of the original 72 Tiger tanks sent to stop Patton, fewer than 10 ever made it through the night in any condition, and only a handful remain mechanically functional. The rest lie frozen across the Ardennes, destroyed not by a single decisive blow, but by attrition, coordination, and relentless pressure. Yet the consequences of this failure are still unfolding. The road to Bastogne is opening, and what happens next will decide the fate of thousands of men trapped in the snow. December 23, 1944. at 07:10 in the Ardennes corridor east of Bastogne, Belgium. Dawn reveals the true scale of devastation. The snow-covered fields are scarred by blackened craters and the hulks of heavy tanks, their armor split open or burned from within. Smoke drifts low across the ground, mixing with fog and exhaust fumes. The battlefield is silent for a few minutes, the kind of silence that follows sustained violence, heavy and unnatural. American units move forward cautiously. Engineers advance first, checking roads for mines and booby traps. Infantry follows, rifles raised, eyes scanning the tree line. The threat of a counterattack still exists, but the organized German armored presence is gone. The Tigers that were meant to halt Patton have been reduced to obstacles rather than weapons. Patton's command posts are already shifting forward. Messages flow constantly along radio lines and field telephones. Reports confirm what commanders suspected during the night. German heavy armor in this sector has effectively ceased to exist as a fighting force. This does not slow the American, it accelerates them. Orders are issued to exploit the breakthrough immediately. At Hohenzollern, Sherman columns begin moving at speed despite the ice. Tank crews understand the risk, but accept it. Time is more valuable than safety. Infantry rides on the hulls, gripping handholds with frozen fingers. Faces are pale, eyes bloodshot from fatigue. But morale is rising. The enemy that once dominated the battlefield with fearsome machines is retreating. Broken, scattered German resistance continued. Small groups of infantry fire from forest edges, delaying actions meant to buy time. Without armored support, these engagements are brief and brutal. American artillery responds with overwhelming force. The forest shakes under repeated impacts. Trees splinter and fall, crushing men beneath them. Survivors flee deeper into the woods or surrender. Meanwhile, the last operational Tigers attempt to disengage completely. Moving by secondary roads, they avoid open ground. Every kilometer is a gamble. One tank throws a track while turning sharply on ice. The crew attempts a field repair under extreme cold. Tools slip from numb hands. Before repairs are complete, American patrols approach. The crew abandons the tank and disappears into the forest. Another Tiger is lost without a fight. By late morning, American fighter-bombers patrol freely. There is no longer any meaningful German air defense in the area. Pilots spot movement easily against the snow. Vehicles attempting to flee are attacked with rockets and machine gun fire. Roads become death traps. Wrecks pile up, forcing survivors to move on foot. Inside Bastogne, the situation begins to change perceptibly. German attacks that once came with armor and coordinated artillery now arrive sporadically, if at all. Defenders notice fewer tanks, fewer shells. Ammunition is still low, casualties remain high, but hope returns in cautious whispers. The sound of distant artillery from the south grows louder, closer. At 13:20, American spearhead units encounter the outermost German screening forces near Assenois. Resistance is fierce but disorganized. The defenders fight hard, knowing retreat may no longer be possible. Tanks and infantry clash at close range. Smoke fills the air. Machine gun fire echoes through the village streets. Slowly, inexorably, the Americans push through. The destruction of the Tiger Force now shows its full impact. Without heavy armor, German commanders cannot mount a coherent defense. Supply lines are cut. Communication collapses. Orders issued in the morning become irrelevant by afternoon. Units act independently, often without knowing what is happening beyond the next ridge. By mid-afternoon, the road to Bastogne is nearly open. American forces pause only briefly to reorganize and bring up supplies. The men know what lies ahead. A final push remains, and it will not be uncontested. The enemy, though weakened, is not finished. As snow continues to fall and daylight begins to fade again, the momentum of the battle has irrevocably shifted. The failure of the Tiger deployment has altered the course of events, but the cost in lives and steel is still being paid, minute by minute, on frozen ground. The decisive moment is approaching, and what happens in the next hours will determine whether Bastogne is reached in time. December 23, 1944, at 16:45, on the southern approaches to Bastogne near the village of Assenois, Belgium. The light is already fading, the winter sun sinking behind heavy clouds. Snow continues to fall, driven sideways by a biting wind. American units regroup quickly, aware that daylight is slipping away, and that German forces, though weakened, will fight hardest when cornered. Artillery is brought forward at speed. Guns are emplaced in muddy clearings, crews working without rest. Ammunition trucks arrive and unload under fire. Forward observers climb damaged buildings and trees to gain a better view of the terrain ahead. Radio operators relay coordinates in clipped urgent tones. Everything is aligned for a final thrust. German defenders near Assenois are a mixture of exhausted infantry, remnants of armored units, and scattered anti-tank teams. They know the Tigers are gone. The psychological effect is devastating. For days, the heavy tanks were their shield and their confidence. Now they rely on Panzerfausts, machine guns, and shallow trenches carved into frozen ground. At 17:10, American artillery opens fire. The barrage is intense and sustained, targeting known defensive positions, roadblocks, and likely ambush points. Explosions roll across the landscape in waves. Snow and earth erupt skyward. German lines are shaken, but they hold where they can, firing blindly into smoke and debris. As the shelling lifts, Sherman tanks advance, engines straining, tracks slipping on ice. Infantry follows closely, using the tanks for cover. Gunfire erupts almost immediately. Panzerfausts streak through the smoke, striking American armor at close range. One Sherman is hit and disabled, its crew scrambling out as flames spread. Medics rush forward under fire, dragging wounded men into ditches. The fighting becomes chaotic. Visibility drops to a few dozen meters. Commands are shouted, often unheard. Soldiers move by instinct and training alone. A German anti-tank team destroys a second Sherman before being overrun by infantry. Grenades detonate in trenches. Rifle fire cracks in rapid bursts. The battlefield compresses into moments of sudden violence and confusion. By 18:00, American units begin to break through the outer defenses. German resistance collapses unevenly. Some positions fight to the last man. Others fall silent as survivors withdraw or surrender. The absence of heavy armor is decisive. Without Tigers to anchor their line, German defenses crumble under pressure. In the rear, the last remaining operational Tigers are nowhere near the front. Most have withdrawn beyond effective range, their crews ordered to preserve what little remains of the heavy tank force. They play no role in the battle now unfolding. The machines once meant to stop Patton are spectators to their own failure. As night falls, flares illuminate the sky. American forces push forward street by street, field by field. At 19:20, an American patrol reaches a key road leading directly into Bastogne. They are fired upon from the darkness, but the resistance is weak and uncoordinated. Return fire silences it quickly. Inside Bastogne, the besieged American garrison hears unfamiliar sounds from the south. Not the distant thunder of German artillery, but closer, sharper bursts of American weapons. Men exchange looks, hardly daring to believe it. Signal flares are prepared. Radios crackle with urgent messages. At 20:50, contact is made. An American tank column breaks through the final German screen and links up with the defenders of Bastogne. The siege is not fully lifted, but the corridor is open. Supplies begin to move. Wounded are evacuated. Morale surges through exhausted ranks. The failure of the German Tiger deployment now becomes undeniable. What was intended as a decisive armored barrier has instead accelerated the collapse of German control in the sector. The cost has been catastrophic. Dozens of irreplaceable heavy tanks lost for minimal strategic gain. Yet even with the corridor open, the fighting does not stop. German forces regroup elsewhere. Counterattacks are planned. The Ardennes offensive is not over, and the final accounting of this gamble with heavy armor is still to come. The story of those 72 Tigers does not end on this road, and its consequences will echo far beyond Bastogne. December 24, 1944. At 05:30 in the snowbound outskirts of Bastogne, Belgium. The night has been bitterly cold. Frost coats weapons, vehicles, and the bodies of the fallen. The corridor opened the evening before remains narrow and dangerous, constantly threatened by German artillery and sporadic counterattacks. Yet it holds. Supplies continue to move, and wounded soldiers are pulled back through mud and ice toward safety. American commanders assess the situation with grim clarity. The destruction of the German heavy tank force south of Bastogne has removed the enemy's last realistic chance to seal the encirclement again. Reports confirm the scale of the loss. Of the 72 Tiger tanks committed to stop Patton's advance, fewer than 10 are still technically operational, and even those are scattered, low on fuel, and no longer concentrated enough to influence the battle. The reasons for the failure are now painfully clear. The Tiger, designed for dominance on open battlefields, was ill-suited for the Ardennes in winter. Its immense weight strained engines and transmissions. Narrow forest roads restricted maneuvering. Fuel shortages turned mobility into a liability. Above all, the loss of air superiority transformed every movement into a deadly risk. What once inspired fear now invited destruction. German crews pay the price. Many retreat on foot, freezing, wounded, and disoriented. Some are captured in small groups by advancing American infantry. Others vanish into the forests, attempting to reach friendly lines that are themselves collapsing. The psychological impact is profound. The belief in technological salvation, in a single weapon turning the tide, dies in the snow alongside the burned-out tanks. Patton's Third Army does not pause. Units rotate through the corridor, reinforcing the link to Bastogne and pushing outward to widen it. Artillery positions multiply. Engineers improve roads under constant shelling. The Americans know the enemy will try again, but they also know the balance has shifted permanently. Inside Bastogne, defenders finally receive hot food, medical supplies, and ammunition in meaningful quantity. The men are exhausted beyond measure, but morale surges. They understand now that the worst has passed. The German offensive has lost its momentum. The fear of armored assault, once constant, fades as the reality of the destroyed Tiger force becomes known. Across the Ardennes, the broader implications unfold. The loss of so many heavy tanks in a single sector is a strategic disaster for Germany. These machines cannot be replaced quickly, if at all. Crews trained over years are gone. Fuel reserves are depleted. The offensive that began with ambition and secrecy is bleeding itself dry. The battlefield south of Bastogne becomes a graveyard of steel. Tigers sit frozen where they died, turrets twisted, armor scorched. American soldiers pass them cautiously, touching the thick steel, trying to understand how something so powerful could fall so completely. The answer lies not in a single moment, but in thousands of small decisions, pressures, and failures layered minute by minute. This episode reveals the brutal truth of modern war. No weapon, no matter how formidable, can compensate for exhaustion, logistical collapse, and the loss of coordination. The 72 Tiger tanks were sent to stop Patton. They did not fail because they were weak, but because the conditions of war had changed around them. By the end of December 1944, the German Ardennes offensive is in retreat. Bastogne holds. Patton's gamble succeeds. And the story of those Tigers becomes a lesson written in fire and snow. That overwhelming force, when misused, can accelerate defeat rather than prevent it. In the frozen forests of Belgium, fewer than 10 Tigers survived. None of them changed the outcome.